The last record. I think that's just spectacular. But anyway, today we're going to be trying to finish out the book of Deuteronomy. We're going to start at chapter 32. I am not going to read the whole thing. Chapter 32 is entirely depressing, and this is the Song of Moses, and it's more like a country western song than anything else. But he's sorry, man. I'll tell you what. This is not an inspiring song, so let's take a look at it. Give ear, O heavens, and I will speak. Let the earth hear the words of my mouth. May my teachings drop like rain, my speech condense it like the dew, like gentle rain on grass, like showers on new growth. For I will proclaim the name of the Lord, ascribe greatness to our God. The rock, his work is perfect, and all his ways are just. A faithful God without deceit, just and upright is he. Yet his degenerate children have dealt falsely with him, a perverse and crooked generation. Do you thus repay the Lord, O foolish and senseless people? Is it not he, your father, who created you, who made you and established you? Remember the days of old, consider the years long past. Ask your father, and he will inform you, your elders, and they will tell you. When the Most High apportioned the nations, when he divided humankind, he fixed the boundaries of the people according to the number of the gods. Kind of an interesting statement, isn't it? According to the number of the gods. What kind of a monotheistic religion is this? Okay.
Mine says, can't tell what it is, it's worn off.
Looks like a King Jimmy.
It says, I lost it. He fixed the bounds of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God.
Interesting. So
it says sons of Israel.
Sons of Israel. Okay. This is really a wide variety, because if you're talking about the sons of God, okay, then you're saying that these pagan gods are God's sons. Okay. If you go by sons of Israel, which is more historically consistent, then he's divided them up by tribe.
With a capital G. Sons of God.
Yeah. But are sons capitalized? Are sons capitalized?
I don't think so.
His sons capitalized?
No, not mine.
Not mine either.
Well, there you go.
But ours has a little G with an S on it.
Well, I have the number of gods, little g.
That's what we've got.
Okay. Just, this whole concept of monotheism takes a really long time to gel. Okay? The Lord's own portion was his people. So who gave God the portion? The Lord's portion. I'm thinking, who figured that out?
Are they saying there's somebody higher than God?
Well, that's the implication here. Okay, like God was like one of the crew, and some entity said, "This is where your people are going to be." You can infer that, but that I wouldn't call that a definitive thing at this point. Jacob, his allotted share, he sustained him in the desert land and howling wilderness and waste. He shielded him, cared for him, guarded him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirs up its nest and hovers over its young, as it spreads its wings, takes him up and bears them aloft on its pinions. Eagles don't do that. The Lord alone guided him. No foreign god was with him. He set him atop the heights of the land and fed him with the produce of the field. He nursed him with honey from the crags, with oil, from flinty rock, curds from none of this really happened. We don't have any record of any of this. Oil didn't come from the rock. Water came from the rock, but not oil. Okay. Curds from the herd and milk from the flock, with fat lambs and rams, Bashan bulls. Those are good bulls, man. And goats, together with the choicest wheat. You drank fine wine from the blood of grapes. Jacob ate his fill. Jerishim grew fat and kicked. You grew fat, bloated, and gorged. He abandoned God who made him and scoffed at the rock of his salvation. They made him jealous with strange gods, with abhorrent things they provoked him. They sacrificed to demons, not God, to deities they had never known, to new and recently arrived, whom the ancestors had not feared. You were unmindful of the rock that bore you. You forgot the God who gave you birth. Now, obviously, Moses here is talking in the past tense about a people who had all kinds of crops, herds, resources. And yet Moses is the Moses of, the wilderness, the people being fed by manna. So there's, this whole thing is incongruous in a lot of ways, because he's talking past tense about how well the people did in the land that God gave them, past tense, okay? And then they mess it up.
And this is supposedly Moses?
This is Moses telling the people, you had it so good in the land that God gave you, and you messed up. But God hasn't given them the land yet. Okay? Now, understand that the same standards for historicity did not apply back then. Okay? So, what are they actually doing here? Well, this is a prophecy of Moses, albeit in past tense, okay? But the reason they put Moses as a moniker on this is that it lends credibility to what is being said. It's not that Moses said these things or wrote these things. It's that when they wrote these things, they did not think in terms of, well, who actually said this? Okay? They were thinking in terms of, I want to give the highest credibility possible to the things that I'm saying. And how do you do that? You attribute it to Moses. So, and they did not think that this was a denigration of Moses in any way. As far as they were concerned, with the writing styles and standards that they were using back then, they felt that they were affirming Moses and giving him a tremendous amount of prescience for what was going on, or what had gone on. Okay?
But there would be preachers in the pulpit that would say it was Moses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know how, any person who has any serious scholarship would recognize this as the words of Moses. Just can't be. Okay? Anyway, as you go on, you see this more and more. This is the Song of Moses, and like I say, it's like a bad country western song. It doesn't even rhyme. It's not even written in a verse like you would see in a psalm or something. Okay, it's not even put into that genre. So they call it a Song of Moses, but it's not a song. Okay. I mean, if you projected this on the wall, no one would know how to sing it anyway. Okay. In 19 it says, the Lord saw it and was jealous. He spurned his sons and daughters. He said, I'll hide my face from them. I will see that their end will be. For they are a perverse generation, children in whom there is no faithfulness. They made me jealous with what is no God, provoked me with their idols, so I will make them jealous with what is no people, provoke them with a foolish nation. So, okay, what he's saying is that I'm going to embarrass you by using inferior people. Understand, this is how God is looking, the God of the Old Testament. This is how the God of the Old Testament is looking at people who are not Jewish, that they are inferior, and I will use the inferior people to embarrass you. Okay? It's something like the Tuskegee Airmen shooting down German planes. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So you're looking at a God who really is only concerned with the salvation of one breed of people. That's it. There is no indication that the people are going to go in and try to convert anyone to Judaism or to bring them into the fold or any of that. I think one of the biggest transformations that takes place in the New Testament is that this suddenly becomes a mission of the people of God to increase their numbers across ethnic and other lines, that the church is required to be open to people of all races and nations and backgrounds and all the rest. That God is looking at all people as his sons and daughters and as potential followers of God. None of this exists in Old Testament stuff. Okay? Also, like we've talked about in previous lessons, when you look at the disaster that befell these people, it would be easy to think that their God had no power. Okay? But what this text does, it says that God has power, and all of the things that are befalling these people are not because their enemies' gods are more powerful, it's because God has allowed this to happen, encouraged it to happen. God used other people as a way of punishing his own. And so when the time of tribulation is over, this God is still intact. This God has not been relegated to the dustbin of history. And I think it's totally remarkable that given what these people have gone through and what they're going to go through, that they haven't relegated this God to the dustbin of history. These people have been unfaithful to God, true enough, okay? But if God is really looking out for them, wouldn't God, when they were being, like for instance, okay, you raise kids, and you know that there are some kids out there that are harassing your kid. Are you going to sit by and let that happen? No. Or your kid falls in with a bad crowd. You're going to let that happen? Not if you can help it. Okay? So you're going to intervene. You're going to jump in there and say, hey, cut that out. And you can, ground them, make it so that try to diminish their communication with the outside world, which is not easy to do these days. Okay? But you're going to do something to keep them in the fold. Look at what they went through in the wilderness. Okay? They hit all kinds of obstacles. They ran out of water, they ran out of food, they ran out of all this stuff, and they were in the process of falling away in their faithfulness to the God who was leading them to the promised land. And what did God do? God gave them water in the wilderness. God gave them manna in the wilderness. God sustained them, okay, and whooped up on them every once in a while to bring them back in line. You see none of this happening when the people get into the promised land. In the initial assault, you do. You see them being very victorious over people who are more powerful than they are. But when they're settled in the land, it seems like God's kind of sitting back and watching, okay, let's see what happens next. And I know what's going to happen. They're just going to fall away. They're going to be bad news. They're not going to be faithful to me. And so God, just says, well, if that's how they're going to be, I'm just going to leave them. After all the other things that God has done to keep them in line, it seems like God has abandoned them to their own free will, to the point that they did not recognize the presence of this God in their lives in the promised land. So I don't see God doing the corrective actions. Now, on the other hand, you raise kids, you raise them best you can, okay? And then they become adults. And you don't have quite the authority you used to have over them kids, okay? And you're going to see them, especially young adults, making all kinds of blunders, and you're going to step back and say, well, this is a lesson they're going to have to learn, you know? But that's kind of the attitude that God's taking. I've brought you to where you should be mature, you should know where. I've given you the law, I've given you the prophets and all that stuff, and it's yours from now on, so what are you going to do with that? And they mess up, okay? Now, at the same time that they mess up and make mistakes, as a good parent, you're not going to rush into their adult lives and punish them severely. You're not going to ruin them financially. You're not going to, they're still your kids. And you look out for them when they make mistakes. And even when they're adults, you can say, see, this is what I've been telling you all the time, And eventually you'll get that phone call that says, oh, Dad, I'm so sorry the way I treated, that happens. But you just got to be aware that God is kind of a standoff parent when the people get in the promised land, okay? So you can read the rest of that. God is telling them, it's the worst motivational speech I've ever read. But it tells you that when they get into the promised land, they are going to utterly fail. They are going to utterly fail. And if I'm Moses and I'm about to die and I drag these people all through the wilderness and got them out of Egypt and all of that stuff, and they've gone all through this mess, and then I get to the end of the road and I'm telling them, well, this whole venture is going to fall apart. Thanks, God, That's at the same time that we're trying to say that God is faithful, and in this thing they're trying to say that God has been faithful, okay? Moses is saying, well, when we started to go astray, God wasn't very faithful to us anymore. God just kind of let us go down the tubes. And I don't know, that to me that's not really good parenting. You do everything you can to redeem your kids, no matter what their age. So, okay, let's move on to 33. This is Moses' final blessing. Change of mood altogether. This is the blessing with which Moses, the man of God, blessed the Israelites before his death. He said, the Lord came from Sinai and dawned from Seir upon us. He shone forth on Mount Paran. With him were myriads of holy ones. Now, that got me thinking, who are the holy ones? Okay, apparently he's talking about his people. At his right, a host of his own, indeed, of favorite among peoples. All his holy ones were in your charge. They marched at your heels and accepted direction from you. He charged us with the law as a possession for the holy assembly of Jacob. There arose a king in Jerusalem when the leaders of the people assembled, the united tribes of Israel. Hey, brothers and sisters, how does he know there's going to be a king in Jerusalem? And he's talking past tense.
And that's Moses?
That's Moses. So go figure. Okay? Now he's blessing the different tribes, and not all of them. May Reuben live and not die out, even though his numbers are few. Poor Reuben. And this he said of Judah, O Lord, give heed to Judah and bring him to his people. Strengthen his hands for him and be a help against his adversaries. Looks like they're going to be adversaries in the promised land, still surviving. How about that? And of Levi, he said, give to Levi your Thummim and your Urim, to your loyal one, whom you tested at Massah, with whom you contended at the waters of Meribah, who said of his father and mother, I regard them not. Okay, what's going on here? The Thummim and Urim belong to the priests. They're part of the priestly garb, okay? There is a shift here from the Aaronic priesthood to the Levitical priesthood. Whereas once before, these people were the servants of the priests, they have become the priest. And this was not the case under Moses. Under Moses, the Aaronic priesthood is what prevailed. Okay? Somewhere along the line, the Aaronic priesthood fell apart, and the Levitical priesthood took over. And they took over because they were the shock troops of the Israelite community. They were the ones who enforced the law. So you see what's being elevated here under Josiah's reform. He is looking for people who will impose the reforms on the people. And the model that he's using are the Levitical priests who went in and slaughtered the people, whether or not they were family, if they were disloyal to God in the wilderness. So this is not a kind thing that's being proposed here by Moses. And Moses would never propose that the Levites become priests. Aaron was his brother. Okay? He ignored his kin, did not acknowledge his children, for they observe your word and kept your covenant. They teach Jacob your ordinances and Israel your law. They place incense before the whole burnt offerings on your altar. Bless, O Lord, the substance, and accept the work of his hands. Crush the loins of his adversaries, of those who hate him, so they do not rise again. Nothing kind about that. Okay? So you're looking at the Levites as the ones who are lethally enforcing the law, which is what Jeroboam was all about. Or Josiah, rather. Not Jeroboam by any means. Okay, of Benjamin, he said, the beloved of the Lord rests in safety, and God surrounds him all day long. The beloved rests between his shoulders. Okay, well, he's talking about David. Eventually, okay, David was from the tribe of Benjamin, and God has him on his shoulders. God's lifting him up. And of Joseph, he said, blessed by the Lord be his land, with the choice of gifts of heaven above and of the deep that lies beneath, with the choice fruits of the sun and rich yield of the months, with the finest produce, the ancient mountains, abundance of the everlasting hills, with the choice gifts of the earth and its fullness. And the favor of the one who dwells on Sinai, let these come on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers, a firstborn bull. Majesty is his. His horns are the horns of a wild ox. With them he gores the people. What a wonderful thing. Driving them to the ends of the earth. Such are the myriads of Ephraim, such as the thousands of Manasseh. Okay, so what's going on with Joseph? The tribe of Joseph, remember Joseph was a hero. Joseph was the one who saved his people by bringing them into Egypt. Okay. Of Zebulun, he said, rejoice, Zebulun, and you're going out, and Issachar in your tents. They call peoples to the mountains. There they offer right sacrifices, for they suck the affluence of the seas and hidden treasures of the sand. I don't know how that aligns, but anyway. Apparently, Zebulun and Issachar seem to have some more faithfulness. And of Gad, he said, blessed be the enlargement of Gad. Gad lives like a lion, he tears at arm and scalp. What a wonderful guy. He chose the best for himself, for there a commander's allotment was reserved. He came at the head of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord and his ordinances for Israel. So Gad had a good record, and Gad was a commander, military commander. Okay, that at least that came out of the tribe. And of Dan, he said, Dan is the lion's whelp that leaps forth from Bashan. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but anyway, Bashan is where they had the really good bulls. And of Naphtali, he said, O Naphtali, seated with favor, full of blessing of the Lord, possesses the west and the south. And of Asher, he said, most blessed are of sons be Asher. May he be the favorite of his brothers, and may he dip his foot in oil. Okay. Maybe he was in Saudi, I don't know. Your bars are iron and bronze, and as your days, so is your strength. Okay, so when you're talking, okay. You can't talk of iron in the time of Moses. It was late Bronze Age. They weren't really working iron that much. Otherwise, they would have swords of iron instead of bronze. There is none like God, O Jerushalem, who rides through the heavens to help majestic through the skies. He subdues the ancient God, shatters the forces of old. So evidently, Jerushalem, or Jeshurun, which is not a tribe, shatters the forces of old. He drove out the enemy before you and said, destroy, so Israel lives in safety, untroubled as Jacob's abode in the land of grain and wine, where the heavens drop down dew. Happy are you, O Israel, who is like you, O people saved by the Lord, the shield of your help and the sword of your triumph. Your enemies shall come fawning to you, and you shall tread on their backs. Wonderful things to know. So here you have a repudiation, essentially, of everything that happened in the previous chapter. He's gone back to, this is the wonderful thing that you've gone into the promised land. You're going to be prosperous and all these things, and you're going to live in safety. And you've got some tribes out there that are going to start slaying by hip and thigh, and what a joyful thing it'll be. So, you know, the whole shift in language in this second to last chapter. In the last chapter, 34, Moses' death on Mount Nebo. Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah. I didn't know he died in North Carolina, but here we are. Which is opposite Jericho, and the Lord showed him the whole land, Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, the land of Ephraim, and Manasseh, and all the land of Judah as far as the western sea. I don't know, you could see the western sea from that little place. Okay, the Negev and the plain, that is the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees as far as Zoar. The Lord said to him, this is the land which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I've let you see it with your own eyes, but you shall not cross over there. Then Moses, the servant of the Lord, died in the land of Moab, which is where he escaped to, where he got his wife. Okay. Opposite Beth Peor, but no one knows his burial place to this day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His sight was unimpaired, his vigor not abated. You wonder why he died. The Israelites wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. Then the period of mourning for Moses was ended. Joshua, son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom, because Moses had laid his hands on him, and the Israelites obeyed him, doing as the Lord had commanded Moses. So now they're obeying. Okay, Moses predicted that they would not. Somebody did anyway. The laying on of hands is the traditional way of imparting ordination. Okay? So when I was ordained, the bishop laid hands on me. I'm sure the bishop felt like doing that many times afterward. But maybe for different reasons. But it's kind of interesting because if you look in the history of Methodism, okay, Methodism traces its history back through the Anglican Church and back from the Anglican Church to the Roman Catholic Church, and from the Roman Catholic Church back to the Eastern Orthodox Church, and from the Eastern Orthodox way back to, you know, the apostles and everything, way, way back, okay? And every time someone has been ordained in that tradition, some clergy has laid hands on them, okay? Wesley was roundly criticized for laying hands on Francis Asbury and Coke, and sent them off to the Americas, to America, where they became bishops. And so Wesley's brother even criticized Wesley for ordaining people without getting the authority of his bishop behind him to do such, okay? And then these people became bishops over here, and Charles Wesley was really bent out of shape over the fact that these guys didn't have any level of ordination other than through John Wesley. But the laying on of hands, the tradition and the lineage still prevailed through Wesley when he ordained Asbury and Coke. Okay? All right. Never since has there arisen a prophet in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. He was unequaled for all the signs and wonders that the Lord sent him to perform in the land of Egypt against Pharaoh and all his servants and his entire land, and for all the mighty deeds and all the terrifying displays of power that Moses performed in the sight of Israel. So Moses was top dog prophet. Okay? And this seems to be borne out where on the Mount of Transfiguration, who was one of the guys standing next to Jesus? It was Moses.
How would Billy Graham be ranked?
I'd rank him pretty high. I didn't go along with his scholarship very much, but I think that Billy Graham was an extremely effective preacher. I can remember sitting in the peanut gallery in Madison Square, the old Madison Square Garden, and going to a Billy Graham revivals in Madison Square Garden. And I'll tell you what, he could empty the upper decks coming down there, people giving their hearts to Christ. So as far as rank, there are a lot of preachers I don't agree with. Okay? A lot of preachers don't agree with me. But if we're out there making disciples for Jesus Christ, I think it's a good thing. Somehow, one way or the other, God seems to work us through these things. And, and if we can just get to the point where we all recognize that we are servants of the Lord God, that would be a good thing for the church, don't you think? Okay. Well, pray for the Roman Catholic Church. They're going through it again. And it'll have an effect on billions of people and people who are not Catholic as well. So take care. God bless. See you in about 3 weeks. How's that sound? We'll pick it up with Joshua.
Okay. I was hearing about their gathering. So they start voting, and they vote up to 4 times a day.